offices. It had about 8 schools in the vicinity, so a lot of school kids would come in, and they come in the morning and then they leave in the evening. So there's a lot of that kind of traffic volume that we were able to map here. Pedestrian movements, again, people are like, you can see that there's a very high pedestrian. Yes.
I'm so sorry to, yes, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we're having issues recording the talk right now. So it's for all of us, it's asking your permission. So if you could just take care of that. There's a lot of, we wanted to be available to.
The chat window, I can't seem to find it.
Can you, did you receive any requests?
Vidya, I think you can hover over the name of one participant and then choose more. There's on the right is some more. And then you can click make co-host.
Make new co-host, yes. And
all right.
Let's see. Working?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I mean,
don't worry, don't worry. No, we are sorry. So you haven't had this issue before, sorry.
Okay. All right. I'm going to continue. So I was saying we mapped pedestrian movements. So as I was saying, there's a lot of traffic that comes into the street and then traffic going out. So you can see the change in the movement of incoming and outgoing traffic, very very similar to the traffic volumes for the for the vehicular traffic, and public transport. So our 300-meter stretch had about 7 bus stops. So that was like a real challenge. And this is like peak hour in the evening, and you can see how many people are standing on this. And they practically occupy half of the lane that of the carriageway itself. And this is a phenomena that happens in the evening because people are leaving. They get dropped off on the other street because this is a one-way, so they get dropped off on the other street. But in the evening, it's like at any given time, you can count about 100 people standing in any one of the 7 bus stops that are all sort of one after the other placed over here. Obviously, these people need a safe place to stand. They're standing in the sun. As you can see, as I mentioned, there's very less shading that is provided on the stretch, from the buildings. Not too many trees. The trees are only inside the compound walls of the institutional buildings. So all of these were our readings from this. And these are the bus stops that I was talking about. They're all sort of like staggered in just one after the other. Like buses are like sort of coming in like non-stop, picking up like the people every few minutes and leaving. The next thing we looked at was parking. There's on-street parking on the other side. So obviously on this side, because there was a series of bus stops, there was no parking, but the opposite side was entirely dedicated to street parking. So that was something that we had to account for as well. When we were redesigning, we needed to make sure that we were not compromising on the people that are parking here. Also because it's a very important, very busy street and neighborhood, and a lot of people, there's a lot of floating traffic, people coming in and going out, and they want to be able to park. And because this was a tactical urbanism intervention, we couldn't really move them somewhere else, so we really needed to keep them here as well. So these were some of the parking counts that we did. We noticed that there's again, it peaks and it like kind of drops. There's a peak in the midday section, and more or less like occupied for about 90% of the stretch throughout the day. So you can see this is a shot of the street looking towards the CBD area. This side has full on-street parking, and this side is full of bus stops. So just orienting you towards what the street looks like. We also looked at emergency and service vehicles because these people need to be servicing the retail units over there, and there was no timing restriction. They were coming in and going out at all times. And then we also looked at the street detail, like what's going on there, what are the utilities? Because utilities can be obstructions when we are moving, like because normally, we're not placing them in a streamlined manner. Like so, you could be walking, and how many times have we encountered an electric pole or a street light or an electric box or a telephone box and so on. So those again were important. We had marked those. Planting, as I mentioned, they were all within the compound walls of the institutional building. Nothing was on the opposite side. So, and then of course, on this 300-meter stretch, there were like multiple materials as we were trying to see if there was a palette, a material palette that was going for the street, but no, that wasn't the case. Then we came to the people, right? Like the stakeholders. So who are the stakeholders? We did an age and gender mapping. We noticed, at several intersections, we did an age and gender mapping to see what is the composition of people. We noticed, as I mentioned, because of the schools in the neighborhood, there were peaks. We'd see a lot of kids at a particular time in the morning and in the evening. And then throughout the day, we saw a lot of old people because they were coming to the offices. These were government offices. So they were coming in for various reasons, pension, banking, whatever. So there was a lot of old people. There was a temple which brought in a lot of families. People kept coming to visit the temple. So tied to the land use, because of the mixed land use, we saw a steady stream of all gender and all age groups that were coming at different times during the day. There was very less activity that was happening on the street per se, even though there were a lot of volume of people. Like most of them were just waiting for bus stops or sleeping or just spending, and very limited in terms of the activities. Like there was very less reason for someone to linger on the street, and that's the reading that we could come. And then we also mapped the vendors. There was a series they would all sit along the bus stop edge because that's where people are waiting. Vendors normally go where people are, so they were waiting where mainly trying to call out to the people that are waiting at the bus stops. So we came up with these primary, secondary, and tertiary user groups. And so we had the working population, the people that are coming to the government offices, the shopkeepers who come open shop in the morning and shut at night, the vendors who do the same thing, and there were a lot of homeless people on the street. These were primarily people who kind of occupied the street for a long period of time. The secondary user groups were like the floating population. So these are the people that are visiting the offices, and then the people that are coming in to shop. And the tertiary user groups were the people that were kind of coming in spurts. This is the students, as I mentioned, the people, the visitors to the cinema, and the visitors to the temple. Right? We also did this mapping of when they occupy the site. The sort of, as you can see, the primary user group are sort of continuously there, and then the secondary in in bits and pieces, and then the tertiary are like spurts over there. And so we kind of wrapped it all up with a SWOT. What can we do, and what do we want to do on the street? So our tactical urbanism, as you all probably know, is the whole idea behind it is short-term action which leads to long-term change, right? It allows you, it's a great tool that allows you to test an idea. It allows you to seek feedback. It's a great participatory tool because, before you go ahead and spend taxpayer money in putting some permanent infrastructure on the ground, which, nobody knows anything about or nobody wants anything of it, this allows you to really put it out there, test it, see if they like it, and then go ahead and make it permanent. It also allows you to be flexible with the design, to make changes based on the post-evaluation, which we did. So we also conducted a series of surveys with the people that were on the street, asking them questions about how often they come here, how much time do they spend here, what kind of activities would they like to see on the street. So we did all of that as a sort of, pre-survey before we went ahead with the design. And then we came up with our design interventions that then we tested out, and we again sought feedback from them after the tactical urbanism experiment was unfolded, right? So going straight into what we distilled off the site and what were the interventions that we were looking at, right? So this was the existing road geometry, as I pointed out. So there was footpath on both sides. They had a pretty decent footpath, although it wasn't enough for the volume of people that were there. There was a bus lane, there were 2 car lanes, and there was a parking lane, and so on. So this was the existing road geometry. And this is what we changed. We didn't remove, as you can see in the icons over here, we didn't actually remove anybody, because you were like, okay, these guys have to be here. What we did was just redistribute the right of way in a way that was equitable for all of them, right? What we felt was that the vehicle traffic was getting a lot of road space. And we saw the picture of the people that were standing on the bus stops, were all spilled over on the carriageway. So all we did was just like sort of redistributed equitably based on the data that we had, right? Now, this is why we do all of this mapping, I mean, it's not just that, Shaurya was talking about this traditional practice of doing stuff in college. It's about how you actually make use of that. Like, how do you put it to some use and draw value out of it when you're doing a project on the ground, right? Like, so we had an influence from each of those mappings that we did, right? And if we did if there was a mapping that wasn't really giving us any results, there was no need to even put it up there. Like, there was no need to make that drawing at all. So we basically redistributed the road geometry for all the users. We retained the parking, as I mentioned. I think we retained 90% of the parking, if I remember correctly. And that was because it was really just like parking that was short-term parking. People were like, coming in, visiting the shops and leaving. And then of course the service vehicles that I showed you a picture of. So it didn't really affect it. And that was something we wanted to test during the experiment as well. And we weren't wrong in that assumption that, if you remove 10% of the parking from the street, nobody was going to be affected that much. The next thing we did was pedestrian crossings, right? Like, there were no pedestrian crossings on the street. There were so many pedestrians and no pedestrian crossings. Everyone was crossing everywhere. It was very haphazard. I keep mentioning the children that are going to school, and a lot of the senior citizens that are coming to the offices over here, and they have no place to cross safely. So we identified places where we felt that we could do with a pedestrian crossing. And in order to make people use them, we do have a tendency to cross everywhere, that's just how we are, I don't know, just how we're programmed, I guess. But, just to get people to use the crossings, we also came up with like very sort of colorful, unique designs for the pedestrian crossing so that, you're visually drawn to it and you want to cross the pedestrian crossing. So that was a strategy with this. So yeah, these were some of the designs that we made. Some of them were 3D patterns as well, and some of them were just, whatever, like fun patterns that we wanted. We really just wanted to make it colorful. So here's an example of pedestrian crossing. This is the implementation that I'm talking about, right? And then we looked at the intersections. So the intersections were a little nut job kind of stuff going on there, right? Like, everyone is turning everywhere, everyone is crossing everywhere, like, everything was very haphazard. So we took these key intersections and we reworked all the radii, and we, of course, came up with these patterns again to sort of visually direct somebody who is driving a vehicle to turn, outside of that radius and not come very close to the curb line, which was what we had reclaimed for the pedestrians. So this was, for instance, this is the clock tower intersection. This is what we came up with, and this is what it looked like when we finished it. This is the town hall intersection, and this is what we came up with, and this is what it looked like. And just a few views of the street itself. So you can see that the shading device that you see here was something you remember I kept reiterating about how there was no shade for people to walk along the stretch. So we wanted to give them an opportunity. We just didn't reclaim the sidewalk and give them more space to walk, but we also wanted to make it comfortable. You can also see that we had planter boxes. We also had these seatings that were made out of tires. And again, I keep mentioning kids, old people, a lot of people waiting at the bus stop. Nobody has anywhere to sit or wait in the shade. All of this was, coming from the observations that we had made on site, and, finding really quick and easy ways to make it possible for them to experience a different kind of a street, give them a different street experience compared to the one that they've been used to for years. On the right here as well, we had seating that was made out of pallets. These were small retail units. A lot of people were lingering around here all the time. So we thought, why not give them a little bit of seating to come out and spill out? Maybe some of the vendors could also set up stalls here. So we were thinking in multiple ways when we put up this kind of seating here as well. The shaded streets that I was talking about, this is what it looks like and what we proposed and what we managed to put up. This was a very simple structure. We just had some GI pipes and we just put these, it's almost like saris. These are saris, by the way. These are saris that we bought from a shop that was on the street. And we just put them up there. Like I said, they were drying, but, you can see that people look a little bit more comfortable walking there. The plants, of course, adding some color. Who can say no to plants? These are some images of what it looks like. And remember I mentioned that, there were very less activities on the street, like people weren't doing anything except waiting for transport. So we felt like we wanted to, have other activities to encourage people to linger on the street. If you linger, it improves your livability. It's only if you're able to linger, it means it's livable. That's kind of what we were going with. And again, drawing on the fact that there were so many kids that were coming here, we kind of, came up with these little games. Adults can play games too. So we came up with these games and we put them up. And these were, some games that were put on the sidewalk that were reclaimed. And again, a few more views. And this is the bus stop. As you can see, a lot more people. There's enough space for them to stand now and sit. And so by the pattern that you can see, it's vibrant, and contrary to what we were fearing, the buses actually stopped on the other side. So I think there were a lot of behavioral science that we were playing with here, like really psyching people into thinking and behaving in a way, and demonstrating that it's possible to do this through design. A lot of times, it's not easy. I'm not saying that you can solve all the problems, all the behavioral issues through design, but we have to try, and I think that's what we were trying. We really tried here. Can we do it? So for us, as I said, it was anyway a test case, right? So we were really testing out so many things here. Will this work? Will it not work? Will people like it? Will they reject it? Will they actually follow what we want them to follow? Will they behave in a manner that we are encouraging them to behave, or will they, just do whatever the hell they want to do, right? These are pictures that, I think were testimony to, the success of it. These women, we spoke to them as well, and they were like, we're all friends. We come here every day, and we've never had an opportunity to sit down and chat like this while we're waiting for the bus, and you can see how comfortable they are just doing this, and I think it's a very, very heartwarming picture to see them do this. And we also looked at the utilities, and this is Kushali's design. We wanted to also dress up the utilities. It's like, we don't want to leave any stone unturned. Let's fix everything here, in every way possible. So we had these designs for utility boxes, which are normally so ugly, but, and of course the dumpster itself. So Going back to the user group analysis that I was talking to you about earlier, so we went back to the same set of people, and we also, along with the design interventions that were planned and implemented, we also designed a user engagement strategy during the Tactical Urbanism event. How are we going to reach out to all these different people, right? And how are we going to seek feedback from them? So we kind of broke it down into, so we worked with our existing stakeholder mapping that we had done. And we kind of like broke them down by duration, like how much time do these people have, right? Like somebody who's going to work is not going to spend half an hour and answer a bunch of questions for you, right? So we had one group that was less than a minute, and we had another group that was 1 to 5 minutes, like people who were maybe waiting for a bus or something, who have a little bit more time. And then the ones that have much more time, which is like more than 5 minutes, right? And we came up with different ways to engage with these people. So the less than 1 minute, we had these intercept surveys. So we just like conduct them at key strategic locations, which is at a pedestrian crossing. So we might ask them if, is this where they normally cross? Did they cross here today because we had this painted? Would they use it? And things like that. So really quick 2 or 3 questions, like intercept surveys. Again, parking, like, will you park here? Are you finding the parking arrangement convenient? And so on and so forth. We asked bus drivers who were standing at a bus stop, like really quick, he's stopping and he's picking up a passenger, but we're just asking him 2 or 3 questions. So those are like the intercept surveys. And then we had these opinion polls, which were, like these sort of A1 size panels that we had made. And they had a bunch of options where people could put up stickers of what they preferred. I want this, I don't like this, or whatever. Like, so very quick, like, just having them put stickers, but going over a bunch of options for what the street section could be like if designed permanently. And then we had a bunch of activity-based things, like little games and stuff for people that had a little bit more time. So this is, we had these, we rented out these little mobile carts, these laris, as you may know it. And so those are our panels. So there was information about the street. So we had also like put up, the data that we had collected about the street. So it was also about telling them what the project is about. So the stuff that I showed you earlier on in the presentation were also part of the presentation, part of the panels that were up there. So we were, we had volunteers who were there who would explain what the project is, and also then finally get them to give us their opinions on the different options that we had come up with. Would you like walking beside planting? Would you like walking beside artwork? Would you like walking beside a railing? Would you like walking beside parking? So trying to kind of understand different right-of-way configurations and what they felt most comfortable walking beside, and so on and so forth. So that's it. This was our project, and I'm done with my presentation. I can, if you have questions, you can ask questions now.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Vidya. I think it was a great insight on tactical urbanism for all of us, because you have been, even in our debates that we have within us, the student body, we have been talking about what role tactical urbanism has, especially now in the post-COVID scenario, because a lot of emphasis has been laid on a non-motorized transport. A lot of emphasis has been laid on people walking and cycling, and also the temporality that cities have now. So I would want to know your thoughts on that. Like, how do you think tactical urbanism is going to be pursued further after this scenario?
Well, that's a great question to start with, and I do have an answer for that. In fact, I think this project was the first one in the country that demonstrated across a very long stretch how this could be done. I mean, we've been doing tactical urbanism experiments in India for a few years now. A lot of people have been working out intersection design. But I think what kind of distinguished this one was this sort of holistic looking at multiple aspects, right? Like, so we weren't just looking at promoting non-motorized transit, which is what I said, when the clients came to us, the idea was to look at it from a very non-motorized transit lens. But we really expanded the brief, because we felt compelled to do it. We looked at the user groups, and then we looked at, the street, and then we felt like, we needed to do all of this. So there were a lot of additions, and I think our clients were great on this project, where they allowed us the freedom to actually go ahead and run with it and do this really massive experiment across an entire street. So I think it's become like a precursor. So we're currently working on another one in the COVID, as a COVID response, in fact. And this is in Kochi and Trivandrum. The Kerala government has sort of, consented to trying out tactical urbanism to encourage walking and cycling in their cities as a COVID response. And we're right now in the office, that's what we're working on. And it's very challenging because we don't have access to the site. We're in Chennai, we can't go to Kerala. And we're doing this remotely, So all of this analysis that we did, where we were on the site, we counted all of these, people that are walking and, paid attention to all the activities and all of this. We're doing all of this remotely. So it's been very challenging. So like one of our interns is actually in Kochi right now. So she actually does a Zoom call and she walks on the street with the video camera, and we're like, stop, tell us what's there, and, point to the ground. We want to see what's there. Like, is there an electric box there? Okay, like what's going on here? How is this car turning? And we're doing a remote site visit. And I think it's exciting and challenging as well to read a site, to come up with a similar intervention, as a COVID response. We're obviously looking at social distancing, we're looking at, the bus stops were a very important part of this project. But over there, again, we're looking at bus stops and we're trying to figure out and design how they can be designed for physical distancing. Like, how do you ensure that people are getting into and out of a bus without contact? How do you ensure that they stand in the bus stops without, with distance and so on and so forth? So yeah, I think we'll be seeing more of this. Expect to see it in Kerala very soon because we're working on it. Does that answer your question?
Well, yes, it does. It surely does. And
Just give me a second. I want to turn on the lights. I can't see anything here.
Sure.
Yes.
So we have two more questions from the audience. The first one is about that. What compelled you to take this particular site? If there is any brief narrative about why this site and what compelled you to choose this one, and also who funded the project? If you could give us.
The project was funded by GIZ. The site selection was actually done with the municipality. The municipality asked us to take this street. So there were about 2 or 3 options, but we were eventually asked to work on it. So, all the stakeholders need to, take ownership of it. So we really wanted the municipality to tell us which one to take, because only then, they would, sort of buy into this idea. And I think it was great because they also picked the stretch on which their own office was, which means that they were able to see see it unfold and see what came of it through the duration of the Tactical Urbanism event, which is why now they kind of unreservedly endorse it. You know, the commissioner, I think last week he did a national webinar hosted by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, and he presented this project. And you know, it was beautiful to see the way he owned it and he presented it. You know, and that's what we want. You know, like that you make something and you know, and the city owns it. You know, and they want to do more of it. And he now advocates for it. You know, and like enough to go on a national webinar and then say that you know more cities should do this.
Another question is about if you consider did you consider installing public toilet in this area, considering the number of people visiting the site?
No, I mean I don't think I really, well, unless you're talking about mobile toilets, like it won't be practical. Like, but no, I don't think toilets were not. I mean, we didn't have the budget for it. I think at the end of the day, we were also like struggling with budget. Like, we wanted so much more on the street. Actually, like we compromised on public toilets. We didn't put public toilets, but also because there was a public toilet on the street behind the clock tower. There was a public toilet, and the municipal offices also had toilets within them. So we weren't bad people that didn't put toilets. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely, there was a budget constraint. We couldn't do many other things that we wanted to do. We really wanted to do more seating, in fact, you know, because I mean, because there's so many people that were there on the streets. Like we had to limit the number of seats and things like that. I mean, it was also the first time that our clients were working on a project like this. It was the first time that the Coimbatore city was working on a project like this. Nobody was sure. It was actually like, you know, I think at the back of everyone's minds, they were worried that it would fail. And you know, what would happen. And I think because they had never seen a project like this anywhere, like they just couldn't fathom it. Like the commissioner, till the very end, was like, why is this temporary? Why can't you make it permanent? Like, why are you doing all this temporary stuff? Like, you know, so is this, like when we're presenting the designs, he would be like, is this permanent? Will this paint will always be there? You know, it was always this question of, is this permanent or temporary, and why are we doing temporary? Like, but of course, as I said, you know, over time, he's completely converted now, and I think, I mean, that's like one of the biggest successes of the project, I would say. He wants to do more of this as well in the city.
Yes, we have one of those questions that's specifically asking the response of the local government, and also maybe the challenges that come up when you deal with the stakeholders at that level, because so far in your presentation, we got to know about the stakeholders on site. Yeah. But what was the response of the local government?
So the local government, as I said, was the municipal corporation who totally, like, you know, swear by this method now. And I think they would want to do this before they undertake any project. I mean, I think it's come to that level. In fact, we're also trying to train their engineers to do a tactical urbanism experiment on their own before they work on a project. Like, you don't need to call us every time, you know, like, we're also working on a training program for their engineers so they can do it. I mean, their commissioner is endorsing it. He really, you know, swears by it as a method. So, you know, why not equip their own people to do more of these experiments? And we don't need to also, and I think the beauty of a tactical urbanism project is that, you know, you can do as much as you can or as much as you want with it. You know, like I said, right? Like, I mean, it's like, it depends on the budget. You can take a very small budget and, you know, just put cones and ropes and finish it, or you can spend some more money and put paint, or you can spend some more money and put shading, you can some more and put seating, some more and put toilets, some more and put vendor kiosks, so many different things, right? Like, I think it allows that flexibility for you to try out what you want to do on that street with very limited budgets. And I think, you know, I mean, Shaurya was talking about how we work with less resources, right? And it kind of really also appeals to the ethos of what we do, because it's like, before you go ahead and blow up like 10 crores on a street, and you've done stuff that is completely useless to the stakeholders. At least here you've asked people, right? And then you've sought feedback. I can, in fact, tell you like one of the mistakes that we made in the design was in the location of one of the pedestrian crossings. There was one pedestrian crossing that didn't work, and so we had actually designed it based on like street design principle, like you make the radius, and then you don't place the crossing at the radius, but you place it a little off the radius. So we were kind of doing a little bit of textbook design there. But on site, when we were observing pedestrian behavior, nobody crossed at that pedestrian crossing. They were crossing off of it, right? So I mean, that's a takeaway from me. Every time I look at that crossing, I know that I made a mistake there. Like I feel like we should have placed it, where they cross. It's a desire line, because it was more about working with the desire line as opposed to working with the street design road geometry principle. And I think that's important to acknowledge when you're, and this allows you to do it, right? Like if we had to go straight away and do a permanent intervention, we'd have gone and built it and put the pedestrian crossing over there, and forever it's like over there. So yeah, I think the scale of it is allows for that much flexibility for you to do as much or as less. And so yeah, I guess like I said, we're trying to see if we can enable them to do it by themselves now.
The next question is a little logistical. It's about when you have so much furniture which is not permanent. How do you make sure that it stays the next day?
Yeah, that's a really good question. But it stayed, I mean, we were worried. We were worried that people will steal the planter boxes. We were worried that people will, steal the seats. We didn't lose anything. I mean, I guess, I always believe that, people will take pride and they'll take care of public infrastructure if they like it. And I think that's probably the only conclusion that I'm going to draw from this, is that, maybe they liked it so much, and, that they felt compelled to leave it there. Like, we had no vandalism, nothing was lost. We were worried that people will steal the saris, on the shading as well. And when we were installing as well, a lot of people told us, in fact, they were like, oh, like, you come back and, this is not going to be there type. But no, it didn't happen that way, like, it was all there. Everything was there. I'm just gonna put this. I want to put up this slideshow as we're talking, so that at least there's something to see. Can you see? Are you guys able to see?
Yes, we can see. Yes.
Is the slideshow moving?
Yes, it is moving.
Okay, fine. Then we can continue talking. I mean, I just wanted to leave. These are like behind the scenes, and I just wanted to leave them on so you can see how we did it. Of course, all of the work happened at night, as you can see. We had to shut down the street, do a bit of traffic management, and then do all of this. So we did. It was like 5 nights back to back that we worked to get this thing going.
Okay, should I move to the next question?
Yes.
So, the next question talks about, maybe it's a part of the process, that if there was other things that you thought about would be implemented, but it didn't happen. I mean, was it some other interventions that you thought you wanted to do and your team wanted to execute, but for some reason it didn't happen? If you could talk about some of those.
I don't think we didn't do anything. Maybe we scaled down a few things. Like, for instance, we wanted more games. Um, I think we didn't do as many games as we wanted, and that was one. And again, as I said, number of seating, we had to cut down on the number of seating. No, we didn't. I mean, as far as our proposal was concerned, like we kind of managed to do everything. And I think we also, even when we were doing the budget allocation, we were also careful to make sure that all the different types of interventions that we were planning for and wanted were going to be there on the street, like even if it's like toned down. So yeah, there was a lot of like, I think the project planning part for the implementation was quite rigorous. I mean, a lot of back and forth, a lot of like, give and take here and there and all of that. Like, no, I don't think that we didn't do anything that we wanted to do. We were very particular that we didn't want to displace anybody, like including the vendors. So we, like the sort of provisions for the vendors, they were all there. Like, this is where you guys sit. If you guys can sit where you sit. And we were kind of hoping that more vendors would come and sit under the shading, but I don't think that happened to us. I think the vendors kind of kept to where they were originally sitting.
There is another question that talks about how did you decide those patterns and colors and that entire language of the crossing, because they're quite different from each other. So what was the thought process behind those colors and those patterns?
We had a color palette, so we had like about 5 colors that we picked, right? And they're not very completely different from each other. Actually, they are like a sort of transition. And if you can, I mean, in the drone shots especially, you can see that they are part of the same palette. The patterns, we wanted something that was geometric, and I think the ease of transferring the design from the drawing board to the street was a very important consideration, right? And we don't have forever to do this, right? Because we're working at night, we're blocking traffic, which means that we have to like really also do something fast. So I think those are all considerations in the kind of design. Like, so we had to like make stencils or make like some sort of like template some of these and make sure that the pattern can easily be replicated across the entire stretch. We also, the other thing we were conscious of was also the zones, right? So the intersections had like a particular, the intersections were mostly yellow and orange. And then the other colors start appearing along the street, the length of the street. So there was that transition of the colors, if you notice it. But I think the primary determining factor was the ability to transfer it very quickly onto the street from the drawing board. And we also wanted vibrant colors. I mean, I think that was something that we really wanted, because we wanted it to stand out. And again, I think, I was talking about behavioral patterns and changes, inducing changes in behavioral patterns, right? And we felt like, we wanted to use the colors to, excite people to want to be here and to do things in a particular way that we were gradually trying to condition them into doing.
And how would these interventions typically develop or evolve over time with different activities and in the future? So how do you think this would evolve with time?
I'm not getting the question. I mean, what do you mean? How will it evolve?
So whenever we talk about urban design interventions, we often talk about how they are contested by time, in the sense that they might get obsolete, and or maybe they require a certain sense of flexibility to be able to, for people to adopt them over time. So how do you think that this intervention, especially the one that you've done, how do you think it would evolve with time? Will it evolve, and how will it get adopted?
So I'm kind of still not getting the question, because it's a temporary test case, right? Like we were trying to assess if the street could function, could perform from a functionality perspective as well as a livability perspective without any kind of compromise. And that's what we were testing, right? Like, so the road geometries and the turning radii that we were very careful to ensure that buses or any vehicles that were moving, whether it's a two-wheeler or a bus, there's no compromise in their movement, right? So the functionality was an important factor. We can't design a street that doesn't work, right? Because it is, after all, a conduit for people, for vehicles, for goods, and so on. So a street needs to be a functional space in that sense from a movement perspective. But it also needs to be a space that has a livability component to it, is that it allows people to want to be there in that place and to feel a sense of ownership and pride and to want to linger, right? So that's the whole placemaking aspect that we're talking about, when you're talking about the livability. So all these other things that we put in here, the shading and the seating and so on, the colors and the games, are all contributing to the livability aspect of the street. I think, if you look at, great streets are streets that take care of these two things, right? Like the functionality and the livability. And I think you're alluding to a timelessness, and I think that's what how does this function over time, is like, will it be a timeless intervention, right? Now the thing is, if this becomes permanent, that's when you ask that question. Here we were testing out if, this is the way to go for it to be timeless. That's what we were doing. And I think one of the things that in the feedback, post-implementation feedback, a lot of people were telling us was, like, why is this temporary? Like, was the first thing that they would all ask. They would all be like, why is this temporary? And, why is, is this going to be gone in a few days or so? So yeah, I think, it's a fair indicator that people want this, and that they would, it could survive the test of time.
With this, Vidya, I think we have wrapped up our questions, and well, there are a few questions coming up still, but Mehnaz, do we have time?
I have a question myself, actually.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I was wondering if there were some conflicts, Vidya. During the planning of it between different stakeholders, or during the implementation with any stakeholders on the ground, and if there was a way that you got involved in coming down to some consensus.
Okay, that's a good question, actually. So the conflict we were anticipating was mostly from the retail shop owners, right? But if you remember, I mentioned that we had done pre-implementation surveys as well, where we, firstly apprised everyone that this is happening, and and then of course we also sought their feedback in what they would like to see on the street. that was also something that we were careful of, making sure that it's not sprung up on them suddenly. And I think, at the end of the day, the Shop Owners Association, so they were there, they would come and hang out in the night, when we were painting and marking and all of that. Like, some of them would stop by and see what we're doing, and, and then they would ask questions, and we would always like explain to them what we're doing. And I think a lot of it was, usually is always tied to questions about parking and things like that. Right. So I think it was like alleviating their fears of, what could a change mean for them. Right. Normally there's this resistance to change. It's a human tendency. Something is changing in your street or in your house or in your neighborhood. Your alarm bells go up. Right. So I think it was like very. We were very clear, right? We were not displacing anybody, and we weren't removing anything. So I think it was just like communication was very important, and we always kept communicating throughout, before, during, and after as well. And I think afterwards, they totally loved it, because they realized that more people are coming to the street and want to be there, and it kind of, enhances the visibility of their street, the street on which their shop is in. So in that sense, they came around. I think the biggest win was really how everyone who had like a million doubts came around eventually, and came around in a very positive way. But I'm also extremely thankful that there was no hostile behavior prior, because I guess that's just, people from Coimbatore being very nice. Like, they were very warm, and they were curious. They're like, who are these people coming from Chennai and doing whatever here? Like, they've been hanging around here for a few months, asking a lot of questions and measuring this and that and photographing stuff and all of that. I think it was just a matter of like keeping them informed, and I believe that helped a lot. Eventually they all loved it. They all totally loved it. And as I mentioned, like, we tried to involve them in as many ways as possible. So for instance, the saris, as I said, were bought from a shop that was on the street. When we were doing the post-implementation surveys as well, we actually reached out to the Shop Owners Association to ask if they would like to volunteer to do these surveys for us. Some of them did, in fact. Like, they were like, yeah, we can organize from our network some volunteers who can come and help with the post-occupancy surveys that you're doing. So, and then of course, all of that was also communicated to them, right? They also got a sense of what feedback was coming from the experiment. So in that sense, I think keeping them involved at all stages was pivotal to avoiding conflict.
Thank you.
Vidisha, are we closing? I think it's 6:40 now.
Yeah, it's about time, but we still have. I'm sorry for the number of, because we have a lot of questions coming up, and we don't certainly have that much time to cover all those questions. But I've somehow tried to club them and make sure that I ask something to all across the spectrum of the kind of questions that are coming up. So I think, Mehrnaz, it's a wrap for today. What do you think?
Pardon? I didn't get it.
No, I'm saying I think we're done for today. Thank you so much, Vidya. Thank you so much for
today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for a lovely presentation.
Getting calls for my next meeting already.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much. This thing, they've just been calling like.
I think thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Vidya, for your time.
And we were happy to hear your thoughts on tactical urbanism and participatory planning. So on behalf of Bachelors of Urban Design student body, I would like to thank you very much to join us today.
Thank you for having me. This was lovely. I mean, it's always nice to present this. It was really our favorite project from last year, and for so many reasons. We're happy that it's also giving us an opportunity to do something that's very urgent and necessary now in a pandemic situation. We're doing that in Kerala, and hopefully we'll see similar success there as well. It's even more challenging, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. The future is looking good for tactical urbanism.
Vidya, you have also uploaded a very helpful toolbox to help with participatory planning and design at the time of distancing.
Yes. Yeah, we did that because I mean we're as I said, we're also struggling to continue work, like our projects, like I mean, and participatory planning is so pivotal to the work that we do. And not being able to do that, I mean we like over the last 2 months we've really been like figuring out for each of our projects how do we go about continuing to do it. So yeah, I mean, I guess because we've been talking about it so much within our office, like we eventually decided that let's put it out. Maybe other people are like talking and thinking about it as well. It's an evolving document. I would we really would like to continue developing it. We actually started going to office from June 1st, so we're hoping to try out some of our own ideas as well, and maybe come up with some more. And I mean, it would be nice to hear from others as well at some point of how we can build this together.
Hopefully, and thank you very much, Vidya.
All right.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope to see you soon with another session of Informal Talks web series soon, webinars soon. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.